Hello everyone, James here again with another AWS Tech Talk. And I thought for this one, it'd be interesting to have a chat about AWS Control Tower and customizations that are available within AWS Control Tower. I've been working with a client recently to build AWS landing zone using Control Tower, and they've wanted to provide some more customization on top of the actual AWS Control Tower offering. So I've been working with them to build out those customizations. And I thought it'd be interesting to share with you guys around what that sort of looks like. So let's jump in. So first off, we'll quickly talk about AWS Control Tower. What is AWS Control Tower and what is it used for? So AWS Control Tower, it's kind of, as it says there, landing zone. So it's an extension to AWS organizations. It sits over the top and provides extra controls. Um, Control Tower creates a landing zone, and a landing zone is a well-architected multi-account baseline that's based on AWS best practices. You can deploy Control Tower in a new account to create Greenfield's landing zone, or you can also deploy it into an existing landing zone with organizations already enabled. Control Tower will set up a series of organization units and accounts, as we can see there in the diagram. So it will set up a core OU, and then within there, it will set up a security, a sandbox, and a production OU. It will also deploy a logging and audit accounts. Now, these used to be have to be new accounts that were created, and if you are setting up greenfields, then you would create new accounts for your logging and audit accounts. But as of about 6 months ago or so, you are able to now use existing accounts for the logging and audit accounts. So if you are deploying Control Tower in an existing organization and you already have these accounts, you can now select these. So the logging account, obviously pretty straightforward. That is used for all the centralized logging that Control Tower sets up, such as CloudTrail, VPC flow logs, etc. And then the audit account is used to store all the audit details and information that Control Tower provides across the landing zone. But also you can then use it as a delegated administrator account for things like guard duty and security hub, etc. From there, you can then build out your OU structure that suits your AWS landing zone and suits your requirements. It also integrates, as we can see up there, some of the tools that it uses. So it does integrate with AWS Identity Center, formerly known as AWS SSO. So it uses an internal directory for users and groups, or you can federate it with an external identity provider such as Okta or Azure AD. If a company is already using AWS SSO, you can enable Control Tower and it will just use that, but you need to enable Control Tower in the same region that SSO is being used. So I guess on top of that, it also uses Account Factory. So Account Factory allows you to easily deploy new accounts and then have them brought under the governance of Control Tower. It uses stack sets and AWS Service Control Catalog to do that. You can then also put in controls. So they used to be called guardrails, but the controls are made up of preventative or detective guardrails or controls. So preventative uses service control policies, and they're put in place to deny certain actions for being performed. Whereas detective guardrails, they are using config rules, and they are more sort of alerting or potentially take action if something happens and one of those rules is triggered. Mandatory and optional controls. So AWS Control Tower does put in some mandatory controls. These are basically ones that kind of protect the Control Tower deployment itself. And then on top of that, there is now a huge catalog of optional controls that can be deployed across the environment, such as denying the use of root user or across accounts, or denying the ability to remove an account from an organization, or denying S3 buckets to be made public, etc. And then this can all be viewed within the Control Tower dashboard. And the Control Tower dashboard gives you a kind of a single pane of glass view over your entire landing zone. And it allows you to be able to look at how many accounts you've got, what your OU structure is. It also allows you to perform any updates to Control Tower as well through there. And it also lists and kind of gives you a view over potential accounts or resources that may be non-compliant, depending on what detective controls you have in place. So that's kind of a very high-level overview of AWS Control Tower and what it does. So a lot of customers, they will deploy Control Tower and use it as it is, use a lot of the built-in detective and preventative guardrails. But then the customer I've been working with recently, they wanted to take that the next step further and look to push out some custom service control policies into their environment. And they wanted to do that in a manner that was obviously, source controlled and automated. So that's where we decided to look and start using customizations for Control Tower. So customizations for Control Tower is a solution provided by AWS. It is deployed into the master account using CloudFormation template. And it basically allows you to perform customizations in Control Tower in the form of control policies and CloudFormation templates. So as we see there, you can use either S3 or AWS Code Commit. So if in this instance, the customer wanted version controlled, so we use AWS Code Commit. And basically that will store your custom service control policies or CloudFormation templates, and it will also store a manifest file, which is the configuration file, which shows you, what you're going to apply and where you're going to apply it to, whether it be an account or an OU level. Commits into that code commit then triggers AWS code pipeline, AWS code build, which then builds out, and then it basically automatically applies the policies or CloudFormation templates to the OUs or accounts that you specify. It also hooks into the AWS Control Tower lifecycle event workflow, so that it can look at if a new account gets deployed into an OU that's got customizations over it, then that can automatically trigger the lifecycle, which will then trigger the code pipeline to deploy the customizations into that new account as well. So it's probably easier if I actually show you this solution. So I've built out a quick demo, and we can run through that now. Okay, here we are in the AWS console, and this is the my master account. So as I mentioned earlier, the customization for Control Tower is deployed using a CloudFormation template. So as you can see here, I've already deployed the customization for Control Tower template. If we have a look in this template, when you actually go to deploy it, there's a few parameters that you can enter. For example, you can put in your custom name for your code commit branch. In this instance, it does actually ask you if you'd like to use what you'd like to use for your repository, and then what your code pipeline sources are going to be. So in this instance, I chose AWS Code Commit, but you could also use S3. These are all default custom control power configurations, so it calls a commit repository. And then there's a few other settings here, around region deployment, max concurrent percentage, failure tolerance, etc. But the main ones here are, what your code pipeline source is going to be, and then if you want to choose a custom name for your code commit branch, etc. So if we come across now to code commit, AWS code commit, here we go. And here's my repository within here, which I've got now. As I mentioned earlier, it's all configured through a manifest file, YAML file. And if we have a look in here, I'm basically deploying one resource, and this is, I've named it Test Preventive Guardrails. The resource file that I'm using is a JSON, Preventive Guardrails JSON that I've put together that I'll show you in a minute. Deployment methods, so these are using SCPs. So I'm deploying SCPs, custom SCPs, service control policies, and then I'm going to deploy it to my development OU. So in my current organization and my OU structure, I have a shared services, a production, and a development OU. And I'm just testing these service control policies, custom ones in my development OU. So if we go back to the repository, and now if we have a look at policies, so this is the preventive guardrails JSON policy that I'm going to test with. So as you can see here, there's already a policy in here, basically just denying the use of regions, except for the Sydney region, and obviously there's no action on global, allowing the global services as well. So at the moment, if I go into my dev accounts, which I will do now, so I can switch over here. So I'm in the console of my development account now. So I'm currently in the Sydney region. If I go to, let's say US East, load up in here. And as you can see, I'm getting API errors because I'm denied for this region. So that's just showing you that particular control policy, that customer service control policy, has actually been pushed into this development OU, which then be applied to my development account. We'll go back to Sydney, just so I don't get confused. Cool. So now what I'm going to do, and it's also probably good to note that if we go back to repositories, when you do deploy the solution from AWS, it does give you an example configuration. So in here, you do get an example manifest file, parameters, policies, templates, etc. So you can, it's very easy to get started and kick off by using some of those examples. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to put a policy in. I'm going to update or push a new custom policy to my development account, so that I don't want it to be able to limit it to what instances it can spin up. So if I show if we go back into the policies, go in here. So I'm just going to edit this through, I'm being a bit lazy, I'm going to edit this through the code commit itself. We'll go edit. So what I want to do is I'm going to add an extra policy here. And if you come up here in my Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to add an extra policy to this. So basically, it's going to deny the use of all instances except for T2 micro. I really want to lock down the account so that people can't launch resources in different regions, and when they are spinning up development or dev EC2 instances, they're restricted to using the T2 micro. So let's just copy this, get rid of that. So I'll come back to my policy here, and I've already edited it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, one of those in there, enter, put that in. Yeah, that looks right. Cool. So I've added that extra policy. So I'm now going to commit my change. So I'm going to author name is James, email address is James at some email provider.com. Okay, let's do, I'll leave it at that. Cool. So that's all looking good. All right. So now what will happen is once I commit these changes, that will automatically trigger the pipeline, which I'll show you, and then push this new service control policy to uh, to the development account. So if I commit that change, oh, okay, great. So if we come across to, once we commit that code, we can then jump across here to the pipeline, and you can see this is a pipeline that was deployed via the customization for control tower offering policy, CloudFormation template. So it's the CloudFormation template deploys all these pipelines. Now, as we can see here, the pipeline is currently in progress. That's because it's been triggered by the commit that we did in code commit. So if we have a look inside this pipeline, so it's already grabbed as we can see here, it's grabbed that preventive guardrails .json file from code commit, and it's now triggered a build. So the build stage, this basically validates the contents of the configuration package using AWS code build. So it validates that my policy that I've put up is valid and can actually be deployed. Obviously, if there's an error in my code or an error with the policy or JSON file or CloudFormation template, if you're pushing a CloudFormation template, this will fail at the build stage. So it's actually going to validate that configuration package. Once it's successfully validated that configuration package, it will then come down and trigger the next stage, which is the service control policy SCP stage. So this basically invokes the service control policy state machine, which calls the AWS organization's API and actually creates the SCP. And then once it's created the SCP, or service control policy, then it triggers the CloudFormation resource stage, and this invokes the stack set, which basically deploys the resources specified in the list. So in the manifest.yaml file, you can specify either accounts or organizational units. So basically, I've specified the development organization. So this will actually trigger a stack set to then deploy the resource that was created up here in the service control policy to that OU. So this takes a few minutes, and we'll just wait for it, and then we'll come back once it's done. Okay, so that took 10, sort of 15 minutes or so, but we can see here that it's gone through all the stages of the pipeline and it's all been successful, which is awesome. So that has now deployed that updated service control policy into the so if we jump back to development, my development account, which is here, let's go and launch, let's try and launch an instance. I'm in the region here, so it allows us to do this because the first half of the policy only allows the Sydney region. Yeah, we'll just go here, call it test server. So I might want to do a T2 large. We don't worry about the key pair. Networking fine, that's all fine. So let's just launch this instance. Oops, there you go. So that service control policy that we deployed has kicked in and is not allowing me to launch the instance because of size or instance type. So if we go to instance configuration, and what we'll do is we'll actually change this to a T2 micro. Launch instance, and there you go, success, because we chose the right instance type that the service control policy was allowing. That is now letting us launch that. So this is quite a simple customization for Control Tower, just for demonstration purposes. You can see how you can use this to really do fine-grained customizations within your landing zone, depending and your accounts, depending on what requirements you might have. And the great thing about it is that it's all automated. So if I was to deploy a new account into my development OU, Control Tower would apply its controls that are associated with that OU. But then because this then hooks in the lifecycle, that it would actually trigger this as well to also apply your customizations. And the great thing about it as well, obviously it's all version controlled, so you can see any updates that have been made. So I hope you've found this interesting and useful, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.